Hey everyone, welcome back to Programmator. In this video series, we are going to build a complete CRUD API using ASP.NET Core and SQL Server step by step. In today's part, we will focus on the initial setup, creating the project, adding required packages, setting up our AppDb context, configuring entity framework core, and understanding how dependency injection works in ASP.NET Core. By the end of this video, you will have your database fully ready to perform real-world database operation. So let's get started. Okay, so we are now in the Visual Studio. To start with the project, we first have to open Visual Studio. I have Visual Studio 2022 version. So based on your version, you will be able to see this screen and create a new project will be there as we will be creating a new project. So I will click here. Now here the project template will come, right? Here you can see you can set any languages, what kind of language you want to see. The templates will come based on that. Platform also you can set like Android or Azure, Linux, Mac OS based on that. And also project type you can set like API is it Blazor or any console app like that, right? So only if you select console app, only console app will come. But as part of this project, we will be working with ASP.NET Core Web API. So I will be selecting that and we'll hit next. We will give a meaningful name as we will be working on the student related things. So we will give the name as Student API, right? And this is the location I have selected. So you can browse and select any other location if you want to store, right? So the project and the solution file will be placed in the same directory that's checked also marked. So your project and the solution file will be created in the same directory. Now I will give next. So here you can see we have to choose the framework. So as of now .NET 8.0 is the latest version of .NET and has the long-term support. After that, as of now, we will not um, do any kind of authentication for this project. Maybe in future, if you want, I can elaborate more on authentication type, right? We have two type of authentication we can discuss further. Then configure for HTTPS, I have checked it. Enable for Docker, we are not going to use Docker here, so I am just not using it. Enable OpenAPI support. This is actually not, we required it, right? Because we will be hosting it in the, I mean, not hosting, we will test our application through Swagger. But if you disable it, you can then also check from the Postman. And we need the controllers, so use controllers we have. Now I will hit on the create button. So it will create a sample .NET Core web application for us, web API basically for us. And here you can see the template you have, right? So if you see the folder structure, right, we have the dependencies here. And here in the packages section, we have only ASP.NET Core, this DLL we can see. We will be adding few DLLs. Now we have the controllers folder and we have one sample controller given which is weather forecast controller, right? So and in this controller we can see that there is only a HTTP GET method is written and there is a class also created for it, weather forecast um, class, model class. Here we have the properties of this class, right? So let's try to build and run the application first. Let's see what we got by default, right? And whether that weather forecast controller is working or not. So it will build our application and the Swagger will be opened, right? So in the Swagger we can check whether that weather forecast API is working perfectly or is there any build error or what. So you can see the local host in 7228 port, it is open now. You can see the name of our solution, student API, and we have only one get method, right? Weather forecast. So if we expand it and if we click on try it out, we will be actually able to execute it, right? Through the Swagger. So this is the beauty of Swagger. You don't need Postman or something for this. So if I click execute, you can see here the response body, the response code is 200, which is okay. And response body, you can see the date, temperature, temperature C, temperature F, and summary, right? This we got. So this is nothing but this get set property, whatever we have for weather forecast, that is actually coming. And this data is currently not coming from any database. It is actually present hard coded here. So you can see here the summaries and all are present hard codedly here, right? And temperature C and summary also it is generating randomly, right? And date also it is date only from date time. Somehow it is calculating it hard codedly basically. But in our actual application, we will connect to SQL Server, right? And we will see how we can grab the data from the database. So now let's start with our actual implementation. So for the better files folder structure, what we will do, first of all, we will create a model class, but before that, we will create a folder in our project level with the name model, right? So in future, if we add any other API, right, then also the model class we can store here. Now we will right click on the model, we'll go to add, we will click on class. So because we will be creating a new class, right? Let's name it as student.cs. So in this class, we will be creating our the get set property of our of the students. So what can be the property? Let's say I will create one public int ID. They should have ID. Right? So I should be in capital. That syntax we should maintain actually. Then we will be having public string name, right? Then let's say I will set public int and age. Here also we will be having our get set, and the last property I will add is public string department. Okay. So from which department he belongs to. So our model class is now ready, right? And what this model class will do when we will embed our entity framework, right? So it will automatically understand that this id is the primary key, right? So what it will do, it will basically consider this class as a table, and this id, name, age, and department, these are the properties here. But in actual table it will be treated as column, and this id will be treated as the primary key, right? So entity framework core is smart enough to understand all of this, that what particular column needs to be considered as the primary key, right? So we will see everything when we will add the migration. We will see that how it will create the table, right? That scripts and all we will be able to see. So this part is done. Now we will have to think about our DB connection and all, right? So before doing that, as we will be using entity framework, we have to install two dependencies actually. Okay. So we will right click on dependencies here, from here, right click and manage NuGet package, because we will be installing from our NuGet package only, right? So I have noted it down here. So first of all, we have to install Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So I will search it. You can see it came here, right? So always install the latest version. This is the latest stable version 9.64.6. I will hit on install, and it will, I have to accept it, and also I have to another time I have to accept it, right? So Microsoft.Entity Framework Core, this is the actual code library we have. It contains the essential classes like DBContext and DBSet, right? Which actually we will be using in our AppDbContext class, right? So we will see everything. And because of this entity framework only, we will be able to use the linking support also, right? And tracking. So this is fine. So this one is already installed. Now we will install another um, DLL. Let me just paste it here. So Microsoft.Entity Framework Core.SQL Server, right? Here we will click on the latest version, install, apply, and I accept. Now, what this will do, this adds SQL Server database provider support to EF4, right? So ultimately, we need the SQL Server database provider support because we will be connecting our application to SQL Server, right? And also it helps us to use that .u SQL Server in our program.cs class. So we will be using it to configure our AppDbContext class, right? So for that, this is also required. Okay, so both are installed. You can check, you can go to dependencies and you can see here that entity framework 4 and entity framework 4.sql server has been added, right? So installation is successful. Now we will go to the our DB connection part. So for that, what we will do, we will add a folder first and we will name it as data because data related things we will be doing here, right? Now here we will add a class. So I will hit class and this class name will be our app DB context, right? So app DB app DB context. I will be hitting enter. So here you can see the AppDbContext class has been created. Now this AppDbContext class actually should inherit the base class. We have one base class named as DbContext. So if I write that, sorry, my bad, db 1 minute, d caps b, yeah, uh, DbContext, okay. Why it is not taking, I think we have to add the entity framework 4, right? So it should be actually added automatically, but as it is not adding, what we can do, we can add that particular namespace, right? So let's try to add because it falls under that Microsoft.entity framework 4. So we will write using Microsoft.entity framework 4. Here you can see, right? Entity framework 4. So now it is added. Okay. The actual logic of this DB context class. So we will add public. So basically nothing but the constructor we are creating here. Okay. So inside this constructor, we will pass our DB context options. Here you can see it's actually the part of Microsoft.entity framework core, right? That DLL what we added, right? And you can see here that the explanation also they have given here to create instance of this class and is not designed to be directly constructed in an application, right? So we will be using one instance of this uh, class, right? So constants inside this we will be pass our AppDB context option, and inside the base class we will be passing this options object. Now let's try to understand why we have written this, right? So to explain further on this, this is the, as I said, the main constructor which we are creating. And in this context, I mean, it receives basically what? It receives an instance of this DB context option, app DB context, right? And what this contains, basically this option, this contains that various configuration, like which database provided to use, like in our case, we will be using SQL Server, right? So which database we want to use, the actual connection string also will be passed, and other setting like lazy loading, tracking behavior, etc. Right? And what is this base option? Base option is nothing, but it is actually calling our DB context base class, and it pass this option, which means the actual information about the connection it will pass to this base class, right? And we have written here nothing because our constructor body is empty, right? So everything is needed is handled by the base class only. So we don't need to add any code specifically here. Now what we have to add, because entity framework, how we'll understand that what table we need to create, right? And what will be the properties of that table, means column of that table. So for that, we will create a public property, public, and it will be of type dbSet. And what is our model class name? It's nothing but student, right? So student, and we will name the property as student, and it will be set a get set property. So through this student property, we can actually traverse through the student object, right, or student data. So first of all, entity framework will understand. So it has actually two-way benefit, right? Entity framework will understand that okay, we have to create a students table which will be of type student, right? Student model class, and the property will be the property of the student, whatever we mentioned, right? ID, name, and all. And in our side, in the .NET also, we will be able to fetch the data using this students class, and also we can traverse through it, we can link it through this object, right? So this is our AppDbContext class. Now what we have to do is basically we have to set our connection string, right? But before doing that, we have to configure this AppDbContext class in our program.cs file. So let's come here. In the program.cs file, we have to build our this particular service, right, which we'll be using. So what we can write here is builder dot services dot, instead of add controller and all here, whatever the suggestion is coming, right, that we are not going to do, because we are going to configure one db context class, right? So add db context. Inside this, we will pass our db context class name, which is nothing but appdb context, right? Appdb context. And inside the appdb context, we will create one instance options, let's say, and we have this options, and we will do options dot use SQL Server. Use SQL Server, because we are going to use the SQL Server, right? And this is actually coming from that entity framework code. Here you can see. And inside this, what we will be passing, I will be actually taking our connection string, right? So for that, what we have to do, we have to write builder, sorry, for Z, builder dot configuration, dot get connection string. And here we have to give our connection string name. So let's say I am giving the connection string name as student one, okay, and we have to give the colon. So here basically we are registering our service, our AppDB context class, and inside that we will be passing this our connection string, right? And builder.configuration.connection string, this line will read the connection string from our appsetting.json class. So let's add our connection string in the appsetting.json. So for simplicity, I have just written here. So one connection string we have to add here. Okay. So we will be using our local SQL DB. So that's why I have the server name as MySQL local DB. And I want this particular database to be created with this name, student DB, and trusted connection to, right? So now let's go to the SQL Server Management to Studio once. Okay, and we will see that there should not be any database with the same name, right? So that validation also we will do first, and then we will proceed with the code again. So let's open whatever the SQL Server SSMS version you have, right? You can open it, whether it is 17, 18. I have the 21 version, so I have opened it. First of all, you have to connect to the database. So you can see the server name from here. If you don't know how to get the server name, so you can just click on this connect icon and it will come in this way. Okay. And we have to click on connect. So our local database will be connected here and we will be able to see the databases and all. If I expand database, here you can see we don't have any database, right? Only the system databases we have, which are by default we get, right? So we don't have any DB with the name student DB, right? Now, also in this, we can add another property in the connection string, which is trust server certificate. So it will basically ignore that SSL related things, right? Security and all, because it is we are doing in locally, so we can ignore it. So this is the connection string, and the main part here is you can see the connection string name, right? So this name should be passed here in our program.cs file. So this student con, right? So basically, it reads the connection string based on the name itself. You can think it like a key value pair in our app setting.json. So the key name actually we are providing. So here also the key name should be same. Based on that, it will pick the value. Okay. So our connection string is also now set. Now we will create our actual controller. Okay. So we will right click on controller, add a controller, and obviously we will be choosing that MVC controller empty because we will do it from scratch. And here you will see that lots of controller options came, right? What kind of controller you want to add, whether it is a MVC controller empty, controller is read write action. We will create API, so we will choose the API controller and we will name it as student controller.cs. We will now add it. Okay. So here you can see this is our controller and the route is API slash controller. So our HTTP GET or post method will be having that API slash then the name, right? So first the our domain name, here it will be localhost only, then API slash our that get call or whatever the get method name or the post method name, right? Now here we have to do one thing. First of all, we have to create a dependency injection on that on our context AppDb context class, right? So what that will do, so let's first try to write it. Okay, we'll create a private read only property, basically private read only AppDbContext AppDbContext, and we will name it as underscore context. So this is an instance of this AppDbContext class, right? Through which we will basically connect with the database and we will communicate with the database, right? So I don't want someone to change it, so that's why we are making it private as well as read only, so that no one can change it. Now, how we will implement the dependency injection? So for that, we have to first create a constructor, public student controller. You can see here, and here we will again pass another instance of this AppDb context class, and inside this we will write underscore context equal to context. So what this particular line will do, this particular line will create an instance of our AppDb context class and it will assign that to our this context property, right? This instance. So we don't have to create the instance of AppDb context class multiple times. We can directly use this property and we can get our, we will be able to fetch that student's property, right? So that is the beauty of dependency injection actually. Okay, we don't need to create the same thing or instances again and again. So the .NET Core will be creating it for us through this constructor. So now we will try to write one HTTP GET method, okay, or you can say HTTP GET API in today's session. In next session, we will be seeing the other calls like delete and put, patch, those calls, right? So let's create our API public async and we will write the task, and we have to write here the return type, which is nothing but the action result, and here we will be fetching all the student data, right? I mean, this particular API will fetch all the student data. So that's why it should be IEnumerable of type IEnumerable, right? So IEnumerable, and of what type? Should be of student type, because we will get the data from DB based on our student model, right? So now let's name it as get students, like that. Okay. Now here there is a point, like if you want to see the API name as get students, then it is fine. But now let's say you want to keep the method name as get student, but you don't want to see the API name in Postman or in our Swagger as get student, and instead of that you want to see some other name. You can set it from here. You can write name equal to uh, you can write here name equals to, and you can give the name as get all students, right? So in this way what will happen, you don't have to change or update your method name, but you will be exposing the API with this name. Okay, so based on your requirement you can do it. It's a good feature actually. And here we will do, we will just return, as we have used async we have to use await, and now we will be use that context class. Okay, so this context class will help us to reach to that till that students property. So the students we created, right? And dot to list async. Okay. So what this will do, this will go to the database and it will grab all the student data and it will return it to the API, right? To the UI, or maybe you can say, if you just Postman in our Postman response, we will be able to see it. So this is our first API, which is nothing but the get API, right? And here we have to use the async. So when to use the async, right? That is also a good question. So here, right, we will be doing the database connection on of everything, right? The entity framework will do everything. So let's say I have lots of tasks. Okay, many tasks this particular method is actually responsible for. As of now, we don't have multiple line, but in real world scenario, we can have uh, multiple tasks for a particular method, right? So if we don't use async, and if that database, let's say the database takes lots of time to reply, right? Then it will not create a new thread, or the same thread will be busy, right? And the other operation will not be executed. But if we use async, our and if the database connection stuck somewhere, then also the thread will be free, and that thread will do the other task, right? And when the database will reply or response, the thread will go there and it will then do that operation. And so this is the beauty of our async await. And here, as we are going to connect our database, right? So it is always good practice to use async and await in our API method. Okay. So now we are all set. Now what we have to do to connect to the database, we have to create a migration, right? We have to add a migration, and then we will have to update the database. Okay. So let's try to add the migration, and for that we have to go to the package manager console, click on tool, and then go to NuGet package manager and package manager console. Let's the package manager console connect with our project. Meanwhile, I have actually written the command here. So add migration with the name, right? So our command is, first of all, we have to create the command, sorry, create the migration, and then we will update our database. So let's try to create the command. So I will give control V. So add migration and the name we have to give, name is initial create, right? I am giving. Let's try to hit enter and see if we, okay, there is a error, right? So whenever if you see that add migration, the term add migration is not recognized as the term of a CMD let like this error if you face, that means some DLL actually we are missing, which actually provides the support of this add migration, right? So that particular DLL is nothing but Microsoft.Entity Framework to core.tools. So what we will do, we will again right click on the dependencies, we will go to manage NuGet package, and here we will search for that particular NuGet package. We will click here, we click on install on the latest version, we will hit apply and accept. So it will install the entity framework.tools, entity framework code.tool. Now again we will go to the package manager and let's try to add the migration again. So now you have seen the build has been started. So it will build our application and then it will see if there is any error, build error or not. I don't think there is any build error. So build will be succeeded shortly. You can see that build is succeeded now, and it will create a migration folder for us. And that migration folder will basically track of all our database changes. Here you can see the migration folder we have. Here we have two things. One is our initial create. So if I click here, you will be able to see two methods. Okay. One is the up method and one is the down method. Up method is nothing but to create or basically to create the tables and all. And down method is to drop the things, right? Delete any column or drop the table. That everything will be present in the down part. So here you can see in the down section, we are first of all dropping the table students, because if there is any table with the name students, it will first drop it and freshly will create the students. And the property you can see the ID, there will be ID column which is of type int, and it will be identity, right? So that means it will be auto incremented, and also it has considered this ID as the primary key automatically, right? Now see the name property, it is the in max in SQL Server, it will be set, age will be set as int, and department will be set as again in max, because name and department are um, string type, right, in our .NET. Now what we have to do, we have to update the database to see the actual change in the DB, right? So okay, before that, let's go to the DB again and let's refresh it to see that nothing has happened here. Yeah, no change, right? No, nothing has been done. So now here we will try to do that update database. Hit enter. Let's see. Build started, succeeded. Let's see if it success properly. Okay, another error, right? So it is saying that only the invariant culture is supported in globalization invariant mode. So first, if you get this kind of error, na, then always go to that our project properties and see that this invariant globalization, is it set to true? Then always make it false. Okay. Otherwise, this particular our update database, right, that will not actually work. Now try to update the database. Build started, build succeeded. Now I think it will run properly. Yeah, everything is executed and done. Let's go to the SQL Server and let's refresh our database. Yeah, here you can see our student DB has been created, and if I go to the tables, right, it is expanding. You can see that dbo.students table has been also created, right? And also here if I see the columns, you will be able to see the ID, name, age and department. Great. And another table it is created for our migration to store all our migration history, right? Whatever the changes we are doing, to keep track of that, it is creating this. So here you can see it is now added. Okay. So now we will go to let's do one thing. Let's before testing the API, let's insert few records, right? So we can add some record. It will be insert to, right? Let's add some record here. So we are opening it as insert query, and so that we can insert some queries here. So it is our template, right? So name, let's say I will give the name as Arun, and give age, let's say it is not required. Age, let's say it's the integer, right? So let's say 20 years, and department, let's say the department is science. Okay, so he is from science department. We don't need two commas here. At the end, we need a comma, and this is a varchar property, so you have to make it like a string. Okay, so this is done. We'll try to execute this query. Okay, one row affected, you can see. The next name I will quickly add like Vijay, and the age, let's say I will giving as 30. Not 30 is too high, right? Let's say give as a student, if we can give 24, we can give, and he is from engineering department, let's say. So execute it, and the third name, let's say we have Ramesh. Okay, his age is 26, and let's say he is from uh, arts department. Let's execute it. So now we will try to see our table. So for that, what we have to do, select star from students, right? If we execute this, we will be able to see all the records in our table. So you can see the three record, whatever we added, we can see here. Now let's go to the API again, and let's try to run the API, right, through Swagger. So we will click on this button, and we will test it through Swagger. Okay. So if you see any kind of pop-up during the build for that SSL certificate acceptance, you have to accept it, and then only you will be able to load it. Great. So here you can see our student API is loaded, and weather forecast, as we have not deleted, it is still present. We are not going to explore it further. You have seen that our student API is currently present, right? And as I said that time, that our URL will be slash API slash student. So if I expand it, we can try it out, and we can execute it also, right? So if we click on execute, it will hit the thing, and you can see the whatever we added in our database, like the ID 1, Arun, age 20, and department science. ID 2, name Vijay, engineering. ID 3, name Ramesh, and department arts. So our API is working properly. It is able to fetch the data from the database, and it is showing it as a JSON response, right? And here just see the URL, as I said earlier, that after the domain, we will be having slash API slash student, right? That is because we have the routing configuration like that, slash API slash the controller. And the name also is basically that. Okay. So I think it is clear to you. In our next video, we will explore further on the other type of API, like other type of verbs, right? Today only HTTP GET we have seen. Next day we will see the HTTP post, HTTP put, HTTP delete, and also we will see another HTTP GET by passing the ID. So basically get student by ID, right? So we will pass one ID, in return we will get that particular student record. This is actually giving us the whole record. But if we, let's say, want to see the record of ID 2, right? That is for Vijay. Then only that Vijay details would come, and not all of the student details. So I hope it is clear to you. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe this channel, and stay tuned for more update. Goodbye.